I'm Nikki from Student Life, and I'm here to talk to you today about definitions that you might need to know, and I'm going to cover them alphabetically, which is the most fun way to cover anything, really, starting with the Campus Student Association. So the Campus Student Association is just another word for Student Senate. Really, the thing that you need to know here is that the Campus Student Association is responsible for ensuring that students are involved in decision making on campus, that they're consulted, and they have work that they do each year on campus to help with that process. Consultation and budget consultation. Consultation is the process that students use to be involved with decision making. So you might see consultation take the form of a student being involved in committees on campus, or alternatively, you might see the administration come to the Student Senate to talk over any policy changes, budget changes, tuition increases, those kinds of things, anything that impacts students. One thing to know about consultation is that students always have the right to be consulted about decisions that impact them. However, you don't have the right to make those decisions. A fee is something that's charged to students, and in this case, we're talking about that in relation to tuition. So every year when you pay for your classes, you pay tuition and you pay fees. They're charged to you at the same time. A lot of people don't know the difference. Don't worry about it. If you don't already know, that's why I'm here. As you can see from this screenshot, tuition and fees are separate line items that you pay per credit. Fiscal year, or FY. FY is often what you're going to hear it called, referred to. FY is the way that we refer to our budgeting years. So it really closely mirrors academic year. It's not exact, but it's very similar. And what that means is that every year in July our budgets are closed down, and then July 1st we start a new budgeting year. FY20 refers to the year 2019 to 2020. FY21 is going to refer to 2020 to 2021. So the fiscal year is always named after the year that it ends with versus the year that it begins with. Often used at the same time as fiscal year, but to mean something totally different is FYE. So we have FY and we have FYE, but FYE refers to, in the state of Minnesota, FYE refers to full year equivalency. And it's a way that we measure enrollment changes over time. Very simply, FYE is if every single student at Inver Hills were taking full-time course load, so 30 credits per year, is considered full-time. And every student were taking no more, no less, that would be what our FYE is. In reality, that's not actually how it works, right? There's tons of students who come in for one course. Students might take more courses. So related to FYE is our head count. Head count is the number of humans taking courses through Inver. Gen Fund is the fund that is not your fee-based funds. And I threw this in here. I think it's used more by student life staff, and it really just refers to tuition, it's the state appropriation, and all of those funds kind of come together to make it possible for classes to be hosted. I mentioned the Gen Fund because it is often referred to in relation to student life fee-based budgets. And the reason for that is because the Gen Fund and fee funds are regulated and used differently, which is great. We want that, right? We want those fees to go to the things that they're supposed to go to. But it's helpful to have the language to kind of differentiate between the two. Minnesota State, MnState, and MnSCU. Minnesota State, colleges and universities, is the overall system of public colleges and universities in the state of Minnesota that aren't the U of M. Most often it's going to be referred to as Minnesota State or MnState, which are both abbreviations or shortenings of the full name. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as MnSCU. That's the old abbreviation that we used to use. We have two systems of public higher education in the state of Minnesota. And so it's the U of M system. That's going to make sense, right? That's the U of M Twin Cities, UMD. Minnesota State, the community and technical colleges are probably going to make sense, right? So that's Century, Mesabi Range Community College, Inver Hills Community College. But the universities are the four-year colleges that are public that are not the U of M. So that's going to be like Bemidji State, Winona State, Metro State. Next is the state of Minnesota. So I put this in here mostly just as a reminder because Minnesota State and the state of Minnesota usually mean different things. Almost always, if we say Minnesota State, we're referring to MnSCU, Minnesota State Colleges and Universities. We're referring to that system organization. versus the state of Minnesota. Most regularly, people are talking about either the legislature, so the Minnesota State House and Senate, or Minnesota management and budget. State of Minnesota, Minnesota State, different things. It sounds silly. Do not be afraid to ask for clarification because you might need it. Public colleges and universities are institutions of higher education that are regulated and funded by the state. Private colleges do not receive funding from the state. They typically have an endowment and foundations that help them to raise funds, and they often have much higher tuition rates. So public colleges are nonprofits. Private colleges can be for-profit or nonprofit, and that just has to do with what happens with funds. If there's extra, like what happens, right? So a nonprofit college is going to be reinvesting those funds back into the campus. So Hamlin, St. Thomas, Augsburg are all private nonprofit colleges in the state of Minnesota. Minnesota School of Business, the National American University, those are all private for-profit colleges. But the state appropriation is what we refer to that bulk of money that is given from the state legislature to institutions of higher education. This is the breakdown of the state budget. As you can see, there's a yellow section that says bill area higher education in Minnesota. That is distributed out to the U of M and to the MnSCU system. In recent years, it's switched from being an even 1-to-1 split, I think more because MnSCU does educate so many more students than the U of M system. But it is usually fairly close to a 50-50 split between the two systems. So then once that is sent to the system office, the state appropriation is then distributed to different campuses, right? So each campus gets a portion of the state appropriation based off of a lot of different factors. So I mentioned the system office in the last thing. They're the ones that are going to distribute the appropriation, and the system office is what we refer to as the main headquarters of the Minnesota State system. It's in downtown St. Paul in the Wells Fargo building. Minnesota State Colleges and Universities guidance, policy, or staff who work in that office. And finally, I'm going to tell you about the Student Activities Budgeting Committee. So I leave this one in here. That's the name. SABC, Student Activities Budgeting Committee, is the name that Inver gave to the committee that decides the budget for student life fees. So in policy, students have the right to sort of collect student life fees that can be used to create a campus culture, to do programming and events, and make sure that clubs are able to function. The campus students need to create a process by which they can review those budgets every year and approve them for the next year. It could be the Student Senate, it could be a different committee, it could be function in a lot of different ways. It's important that it functions best for the students at that campus. It does have to be at least 2/3 students. At Inver Hills, we have elected to have a subcommittee of the Student Senate do this work because it can be kind of a lot. And 100% of the voting members of the budgeting committee are students, which is great. You guys have 100% of the say in how your student life fees are distributed. We have something we call our Student Activity Budgeting Committee guidelines, what help guide those budget decisions. We send them out as clubs are creating their budgets, as we in Student Life are creating department budgets. Ultimate guide is going to be state and federal law, right? If state and federal law says no, you can't do it. It doesn't matter if your guidelines say it's fine. And then under that is going to be policy and procedure at both Minnesota State, at Inver Hills as a college as a whole, and then also our policy and procedure that we've used previously through Student Life. It's nice to know where to look for some of those funding guidelines that have been approved by students in the past, because those will be the things that we use as our cornerstones to guide our process throughout the year. More than anything, I hope that you recognize that this is why Student Life staff are here, right? It's impossible, I think, for any student to come fully prepared as an expert of law, like Minnesota state law in regards to student life fees. Students are also not going to come in with a full working knowledge of MnSCU policy or Minnesota state policy, right? That's why you have staff. That's why we're here. So we hope that you reach out and let us know if there's something that you're not understanding or a question, or if you're thinking, why don't we do it this way? One, we might not have thought of it, so you could have a huge impact. Student Life staff are here no matter what, right? We want to make sure that you have the answers and the information that you need to be successful in your committee, in your club, and in Student Senate.